Your phone buzzes on a Tuesday afternoon. It's a Zillow alert. Your home's estimated value just went up $18,000 since last quarter. You feel something lift in your chest, a small private satisfaction, and you do the thing everyone does in that moment. You mentally add that $18,000 to your net worth. You are now, on paper, $18,000 richer than you were last quarter, and you didn't do anything except live in the house you already owned. This feeling is completely normal, and almost everyone who owns property experiences some version of it. And it is also, in a very specific and important way, a financial illusion that is quietly distorting how millions of homeowners understand their own wealth. Here is the uncomfortable truth this video is going to walk through carefully. If your net worth is calculated the standard way, everything you own minus everything you owe, and a large chunk of what you own is the equity in the house you live in, your net worth number is telling you a story that is technically true and practically almost useless. Not because home equity ain't real, it is real, but because of what that equity can and cannot actually do for your life. And the gap between those two things is where an enormous number of people are getting a distorted picture of how financially secure they actually are. My name is Sig, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, the specific ways standard financial metrics mislead regular people, and why the number that makes you feel wealthiest is often the number that tells you the least about your actual day-to-day financial flexibility. If you own a home and you have ever calculated your net worth and felt a flash of pride at the total, only to still feel oddly stressed about covering next month's expenses, subscribe to this channel right now and give this video a thumbs up if it finally explains that specific disconnect, because it is one of the most common and least discussed contradictions in personal finance. Let's be precise about what net worth is designed to measure before we get into where it breaks down. Net worth is a snapshot. It takes everything you own, gives it a dollar value, and subtracts everything you owe. As a single number, it is meant to answer the question, if you liquidated everything and paid off every debt today, what would be left? That is a genuinely useful question in theory. The problem is that for most homeowners, a large percentage of their net worth, often the majority of it, lives inside an asset that cannot actually be liquidated without triggering a cascade of other problems. You cannot sell 20% of your house to cover a medical bill. You cannot spend home equity at the grocery store. And unlike a stock portfolio, which you can sell a small slice of on a random Tuesday without disrupting your life, extracting value from your home requires either selling the entire asset, which means you now need somewhere else to live, or borrowing against it, which means taking on new debt secured by the roof over your head. Net worth treats $100,000 in a brokerage account and $100,000 in home equity as financially identical in terms of the actual flexibility, accessibility, and usability of that money in your real life. They are almost nothing alike. Here is the concept that explains almost everything else in this video. Liquidity. Liquidity refers to how quickly and easily an asset can be converted into usable cash without significant loss of value or major life disruption. Cash in a checking account has perfect liquidity. You can spend it in seconds. A brokerage account holding index funds has very high liquidity. You can typically sell shares and have usable cash within 2 to 3 business days with no life disruption whatsoever. Home equity sits at the opposite end of this spectrum entirely. To access it, you have exactly 3 options, and every single one of them is slow, expensive, or both. You can sell the house, which typically takes weeks to months, involves significant transaction costs usually running 6 to 10% of the sale price between agent commissions, closing costs, and repairs, and requires you to solve the very immediate problem of where you are going to live. You can refinance, which resets your loan terms, often at a different interest rate than your original mortgage, and comes with its own closing costs typically running to 25% of the loan amount. Or you can take out a home equity line of credit, which is essentially borrowing against your own asset at whatever interest rate the bank decides to charge, typically higher than your primary mortgage rate. None of these are things you do on a random Tuesday to cover an unexpected expense. All of them take time, cost money, and carry consequences. Meanwhile, the $100,000 in an index fund can become grocery money in the time it takes for a bank transfer to clear. Let me show you exactly how misleading this can be with the people who have the identical net worth on paper and completely different actual financial realities. David is 42 years old. He owns a home worth $420,000 with a remaining mortgage balance of $270,000. His home equity is $150,000. He has $8,000 in a savings account and $12,000 in a 401k. His total net worth is $170,000. Elena is also 42. She rents her home. She has no property, but she has $150,000 in a diversified brokerage account, $12,000 in a 401k, and $8,000 in savings. Her total net worth is also $170,000. On paper, using standard net worth calculations, David and Elena are financially identical. In practice, their lives look almost nothing alike when something unexpected happens. David's furnace dies in February. Repair quote is $6,000. He has $8,000 in savings, which covers it, but it wipes out almost his entire liquid cushion, leaving him with essentially nothing until his next paycheck cycle rebuilds it. If something else breaks that same month, David has no accessible resources beyond his monthly income and would likely need to use a credit card or personal loan. Elena's furnace, hypothetically, since she rents and her landlord covers major repairs, is not her problem. But let's use a more direct comparison. Say both of them lose their jobs the same month. David has $8,000 in savings to cover expenses while job searching, plus a mortgage payment that continues regardless of his income status. Elena has $8,000 in savings plus the ability to sell a portion of her brokerage account, perhaps $20,000 or $30,000 worth, within days if her job search extends longer than expected, without needing to improve her living situation or take on new debt. Same net worth, dramatically different resilience. This is not just a theoretical concern about the hypothetical people. It shows up clearly in national data and explains a huge portion of why the median net worth figures by age that get reported constantly, though much less impressive once you look closely what's actually inside them. According to Federal Reserve data, for the median American household in the 45 to 54 age bracket, home equity typically represents somewhere between 55 and 65% of total net worth. Let's use real numbers. If the median net worth for that age group is approximately $168,000, and roughly 60% of that is home equity, that means the median household in this bracket has approximately $100,000 in home equity and only about $68,000 in everything else combined, including retirement accounts, savings, investments, and any other assets, minus any remaining non-mortgage debt. $68,000 is the actual liquid or semi-liquid financial cushion for the median American household in their late 40s or early 50s. That is a genuinely different and more sobering picture than the headline $168,000 figure suggests. This is not a criticism of home ownership. Building equity in a home is one of the most reliable wealth-building mechanisms available to average Americans over long time horizons. But reporting net worth without distinguishing between liquid and illiquid components creates a systematically inflated sense of financial security across an enormous portion of the population. Here's why this distinction matters more right now than it has in previous decades. Home values in many American markets have appreciated substantially over the past several years, which means the home equity component of net worth has grown faster than the liquid component for a large number of homeowners. This creates a specific and increasingly common scenario. Someone's paper net worth looks genuinely impressive, driven largely by home appreciation they had no direct control over, while their actual accessible financial resources have grown much more modestly or, in some cases, have stagnated because most of their disposable income has gone toward mortgage payments, property taxes that have risen alongside home values, and maintenance costs, rather than toward building liquid investments. This is sometimes called being house rich and cash poor, and it is becoming increasingly common in high appreciation markets across the country. The house is genuinely worth more. That is real. But the owner's actual month-to-month financial flexibility, their ability to absorb an emergency, change jobs, relocate for an opportunity, or simply sleep well at night knowing they have real accessible resources, has not necessarily improved at all, and in some cases has quietly gotten worse as property taxes and insurance costs have risen, alongside the paper value of the asset. Here's a trap that catches people who are otherwise quite financially disciplined, and it is worth naming directly because it is so common. Someone owns a home, watches its value climb year after year, feels genuinely wealthy because their net worth statement reflects that appreciation, and gradually becomes more comfortable with their spending because the number at the top of their financial picture keeps growing. They might delay building a robust liquid emergency fund because on paper they feel secure. They might take on a car loan they would have hesitated on 5 years earlier because their overall net worth trajectory feels so positive. This is a completely understandable psychological response to watching a number grow, but it treats a liquid appreciation the same as liquid accumulation, and the two behave completely differently when life actually requires cash. A stock market downturn is uncomfortable, but the assets remain sellable within days even during a crash. A housing market slowdown can leave home equity technically present on paper while making it genuinely difficult to access that value quickly if you needed to, particularly if you would need to sell during a period when buyers are scarce or lending conditions have tightened. The appreciation is real. The accessibility of that appreciation during exactly the moments you might need it most is not guaranteed in the same way liquid investments are. Let me give you a more useful way to think about your own financial picture that separates these two very different categories of wealth, so you can actually see your real position clearly. Calculate your total net worth the standard way first, everything owned minus everything owed. Then calculate a second number alongside it, which I'll call liquid net worth. This includes cash, savings accounts, brokerage accounts, retirement accounts that could technically be accessed if absolutely necessary even with penalties, and any other assets that could realistically be converted to cash within roughly 30 days without requiring you to sell your primary residence or take on new debt secured against it. Exclude home equity entirely from this second number, along with the value of vehicles, which also depreciate and are not typically liquidated for emergency cash without significant life disruption. This liquid net worth figure is going to be smaller than your total net worth if you own property, often significantly smaller, and that gap between the two numbers is not a flaw in your finances. It is simply the honest picture of how much of your wealth is available to you quickly versus how much is locked inside an asset you need to live in. Understanding both numbers side by side gives you a genuinely more useful financial picture than either number alone. Your total net worth tells you your long-term trajectory and overall financial health. Your liquid net worth tells you how resilient you actually are to a sudden job loss, medical emergency, or unexpected major expense arriving next month. If you calculated your liquid net worth and it revealed that a much smaller portion of your wealth is actually accessible than your total net worth suggested, here is what actually matters going forward. This is not a reason to regret buying a home or to view home ownership negatively. Home equity is real wealth and a legitimate long-term wealth building strategy. But it does mean prioritizing the liquid side of your financial picture more deliberately than you might have if you were only looking at your total net worth number. This typically means building or maintaining a genuine emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses in a liquid, accessible account, separate from and in addition to whatever equity exists in your home. It means being cautious about additional debt, even debt that feels manageable, if your liquid cushion is thin, because your capacity to absorb a second unexpected expense while already dealing with the first one is limited when most of your net worth is locked in your house. It means continuing to contribute to retirement and investment accounts even while you are building equity in your home. Rather than treating home equity as a substitute for a diversified liquid portfolio, a home equity line of credit can serve as a backup resource in genuine emergencies. But it should be understood as debt, not as an emergency fund, because it comes with interest costs and the risk of the line being reduced or frozen by the lender during exactly the economic conditions, like a recession or a housing downturn, when you might most need to access it. Here is what changes for people once they genuinely internalize the difference between total net worth and liquid net worth. They stop feeling a false sense of security purely from watching their home's estimated value rise on an app notification. They start tracking their liquid position specifically and deliberately, treating it as its own distinct metric worth improving, rather than assuming it will naturally improve alongside their home value. They become more intentional about the balance between paying down a mortgage faster, which builds equity but reduces liquidity, versus directing extra money toward liquid investments, which builds accessible wealth but does not reduce debt. Neither choice is universally correct. It depends entirely on someone's specific liquid cushion, their mortgage interest rate relative to expected investment returns, and their personal risk tolerance. But making that choice deliberately, with a clear understanding of what each option actually does to their real financial flexibility, is dramatically better than drifting into a false sense of security. Because a single combined net worth number happens to be climbing. Your home is a real asset, and the equity you have built in it represents genuine financial progress that should not be dismissed or undervalued. But net worth as a single combined figure tells an incomplete story for the majority of homeowners. And understanding the difference between what you own that is genuinely liquid and what you own that is locked inside the walls you live in is one of the most clarifying financial exercises available to anyone who has ever felt confused about why a seemingly healthy net worth statement doesn't always translate into a feeling of actual financial security. Calculate both numbers. Know both numbers. Let your total net worth tell you about your long-term trajectory and overall wealth-building progress. Let your liquid net worth tell you the truth about how prepared you actually are for whatever happens next month. Most people only ever look at one number their entire lives and wonder why it never quite seems to match how secure they actually feel. Now you know why, and now you know exactly what to do about it.